Streaming live on Facebook. We're also live on your DSTV channel 279. You can join us with your views, comments, and suggestions on any of our top stories this hour. Let's know what you make of our top stories. Go to Facebook or Twitter. Just post a comment, and we promise we'll share them with the rest of the world. Let's begin from Parliament now, where the House has approved a total of $710 million in 5 loan agreements at an emergency sitting. Well, despite resistance from the minority, the NPP majority MPs pushed through to have the loans approved for expense by the executive. My colleague Komla Kluche has a following report.
The MPs were summoned from the Easter break purposely for the 5 loan agreements, some of which have been outstanding since last year. The facilities are the $60.6 million as a third additional financing for the Ghana COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness and Response Project, $150 million to finance the West Africa Food Systems Resilience Program, and 170 million euros for the establishment of the Development Bank of Ghana, among others. The minority side argued against the facilities, explaining government should not be borrowing in this crucial time of the economic crisis occasioned by the reckless borrowing.
The Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, represented by its 275 elected MPs, even at this age and time of unprecedented economic difficulty arising out of excessive borrowing, which comes at cost to the Ghanaian taxpayer, the Parliament of Ghana is being called upon to approve a loan amount of $150 million. Mr. Speaker, today, Ghana is not only debt distress. We are currently between 98 to 103% of debt to GDP ratio, of borrowing to the level of 576 billion to 600 billion Ghana cedis. That this House is not minded that there must be a stop to borrowing. There must be. And this House must provide that leadership for the Ghanaian people.
The majority side explained that the facilities are all targeted at specific projects and tasks must be supported.
And is anybody arguing against this? Is anybody arguing against this? That we don't want farmers to be able to access agricultural technologies? Mr. Speaker, it's the reason why I'm saying that I can't understand, for the life of me, the import of those of them who are arguing that we should reject this facility. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that it is crystal clear what is intended to be done with and by this facility. And I believe that we should all rise in unison to support it. If the argument is that Parliament should be positioned to be able to trace and track the disbursement of the amounts, that is our responsibility.
Despite these,
Today's
the House
paper,
approved.
say aye. All against say no. I think the ayes have it.
Komla Kluche, TV3 News, Parliament House, Accra.
Right, so we're going to stay a while longer on this subject. It's one of our big stories for the day. Let's hop on to Zoom now. Economist and financial analyst at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, joins us. Prof, thank you very much for your time and good evening to you. So we don't really know the terms of this loan facility, but I do remember that the former President John Mahama had warned his side of the House not to approve loans that were non-concessional. But the challenge here is that we're yet to get this $3 billion from the International Monetary Fund. We've got emergencies to attend to. We've got very important items to attend to as a nation. Do we have the luxury of an alternative?
Yeah, good evening and good evening to our viewers. You see, when it comes to borrowing and then the threshold that we've borrowed up to, which the ordinary citizen is bearing the brunt of, our, excessive borrowing, I was thinking this is not a time to go into further, borrowing. You see, when it comes to public sector financial management, there are genuine reasons, and if I say reasons, it could be economic reasons, it could be social reasons why a country will borrow. And there could also be a dubious reasons why a country will borrow. Now, for this particular loans, and especially the one that is going into digital infrastructure improvement, at this time of our debt levels and economic situation, where households are bearing the brunt, a situation where, we've gone to IMF and IMF has putting up, some revenue enhanced measures, which has, and then coupled with inflation, which has reduced, the ordinary household income by more than half, so you receive your salary for 1 month, and you by the time you get to the second week, this salary has finished. I'm not expecting, the government to do further borrowing. The genuine reason that will make government to borrow will be that, okay, fine. When we borrow, it's going into sectors like agriculture, which is essential to provide food so that it reduces our importation. When we borrow, it will go into areas that will turn up to reduce our importation, which will further enhance or stabilize, our city. So if you are borrowing and then whatever you are going to use the money for is not building up directly into the economy to reduce your debt burdens, I would say it will be a dubious reasons for borrowing. So for me, the current, borrowing that has been approved by Parliament, I would say that it's not a genuine reason. And a genuine reason because we may have the numbers in Parliament approving it, but then it may not necessarily be that you have the numbers and that you are right. The numbers, you can have numbers, but then you get it wrong. The fact that it's democracy and you have the majority getting its support does not necessarily mean that it's a good thing. So for me, I think going into such a loan, it's uncalled for, and it's not something that we should look at as a country.
Maybe my final question to you, how do these new facilities add up to our debts?
Well, I presume that that's about $17 million. And if you look at our debt level and the quantums, and especially when you take up loans that are in dollars and looking at the depreciation of the city, obviously it's a significant add-up. So for me, whatever way you look at it, I would say it wasn't a loan to be, to be approved.
Professor Lord Mensah, I want to say a big thank you to you. Professor Lord Mensah is with the University of Ghana Business School, joining us live on Zoom.
Let's now turn our attention to illegal mining, and the special prosecutor, Kessie Jabin, says he's committed to bringing persons found culpable in corruption and its related activities within the mining sector to book. The special prosecutor, who has broken his silence following growing calls for his intervention in the explosive reports by Professor Frimpong Boateng, referred to an October 2022 press release which announced his office's initial steps to probe suspected corruption and corruption-related offences in the illegal mining sector. The special prosecutor assured the public and civil society that all persons found culpable in the reports on the erstwhile Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining will have the necessary action taken against them. Meanwhile, the Attorney General, Godfrey Dame, says the slow pace of criminal trials and grants of bail to illegal miners is hampering the fight against Galamsey. The Attorney General, in an update to the public on the status of Galamsey, disclosed a total of 119 criminal cases involving prosecution of about 727 individuals for offences connected with illegal mining are currently pending in courts across the country since January 2022. My colleague Dennis Poaberi Wadam joins me in the studio with a breakdown of the cases. And Dennis, thank you so much for your time. What are the regions we are looking at here?
Well, so the regions we are looking at are those who the AG say are the main regions, and those are Ashanti region, Eastern region, Western region, there's Greater Accra region, and some other regions which just have a few cases, and those are Northern region and then Upper East region.
Okay. What are the offences?
Well, for offences, they are largely charged with offences that have to do with mining without licenses, and then selling minerals without licenses as well.
And the Attorney General has also been speaking about reasons why we haven't been able to speedily prosecute these cases.
Well, so the AG has listed quite a number of issues that have accounted for what he says a slow pace of prosecuting these issues. One of them having to do with the grant of bail by the courts, which in his view, that they give lenient bail conditions which the accused persons are usually able to meet. And that after meeting the bail conditions, the next thing that happens is that they abscond and they are unable to get them to stand trial anymore. The other issue that comes, the AG mentions, is the lack of cooperation on the part of witnesses. And he makes the case that sometimes the witnesses are people who have given them first-hand information as to what is ongoing, and there are people who live in the same communities as the accused persons. And sometimes it gets very difficult for prosecution to be able to call on the witnesses as and when they are needed, because sometimes they are victimized and sometimes they are even threatened. The other issue that the AG mentions is the fact that investigators, while at it, they fail to seize the same equipment that they used to conduct the illegality. What the AG is simply saying is that at the point of prosecution, there has to be the point where you'd have to tender as exhibits the equipment that was used. In some instances, because the investigators fail to take the equipment, it usually becomes a challenge for the AG to deal with some of those matters. He also goes on to talk about the failure of the arresting officers to arrest suspects on the mining site itself. It's important that once you are accused of an offense, there should be a causal link. They should link you to the offense that you have committed. He says that because sometimes they go and arrest the people elsewhere other than on the site itself, it becomes very difficult for prosecution to prove its case, to secure convictions. The other issue also has to do with the absence of court interpreters who can speak and interpret in court proceedings. He cites the example of there was a recent case that involves a Vietnamese, where the court had a challenge getting somebody who understands that language to do the interpretation. So that for the AG is also another challenge. Now, one key thing that also stands out in the AG's concerns has to do with wrong sentencing. Now, for the AG argues that under the old law, it was possible for one to be convicted and only fined. I mean, convicted for an offense in mining and in that area and only fined. But there's been an enhanced punishment that now allows people who engage in illegal mining to be sentenced between 15 and 25 years. He cited an example where in one of the regions, some people were convicted and only fined and were allowed to go.
Okay.
Then the AG had to seek a judicial review to overturn that sentence because they needed it to be very punitive. So those people were handed 20 years in jail rather than the fines. So essentially, those are the things that the AG has been speaking to, and he says that these are the things that hinder prosecutions when it comes to illegal mining. Mind you, this is coming on the back of the Professor Frimpong Boateng report, where he also raised similar concerns that between 2017 and 2019, each time, for instance, Chinese were accused of illegal mining, they were taken to court. First, the directive was that they should just deport them. It got to a point where the president issued a directive that they should be prosecuted. Okay. That when they started prosecuting them, each time they were taken to court, they were granted bail. Then it takes us back to the issue of bail that the AG raises. And that each time they were granted bail, the next moment they abscond and they get lost in the system. So those really are the issues that the AG is concerned with when it comes to fighting illegal mining.
Is there a breakdown of the background of those found culpable?
Background, yes. He mentioned some nationalities, including Chinese, Nigerians, Nigerians, Burkinabe, and people from other West African countries. By way of breakdown of the cases, like you mentioned from the beginning, he talks about, so in all, we have 119 cases, and this involves over 700 people. That's because in one particular case, you can have as many as 10 people. So that explains why the cases are 100 and nearly...
We have the Eastern region alone recording 50 cases.
Yes, the Eastern region recording 50 cases. And the AG actually comments the Eastern region because when it comes to prosecutions and convictions, they have done a lot of good job in that regard. There have been an instance where they've secured convictions up to 87. Yes, and all that. So the AG commends the Eastern region when it comes to that particular matter. The other thing that also comes up as a surprise to many, maybe because all the time we talk about illegal mining in Eastern region, Western region, Ashanti region. There have been cases in the Northern region and then the Upper East region.
Dennis, thank you so much for your time and giving us a breakdown on the Galamsey prosecutions.
Right, Portia, I'm going to stay a while longer on this Galamsey story because Ghana appears to be losing in the fight against illegal mining. At a media briefing, Chief Executive Officer of the Forestry Commission, John Aluti, noted that the Commission's task force does not have the capacity to defeat cartels operating in 34 out of 200 forest reserves where the illegality continues.
Illegal mining in the country has dominated discussion over the past weeks. The Chief Executive Officer of the Forestry Commission, John Aluti, briefing the media on the current state of the country's forest reserve, said it is difficult clamping down on illegal mining as the corporates are better equipped than the Forestry Commission task force, adding that 6 of the task force members have been shot by illegal miners. He also added that about 4,722 hectares of the 34 forest reserves have been destroyed through the activities of illegal mining.
1,722 hectares of forest land has been impacted, but then this is only the size of the surface. Some of these impacts, result in very deep, holes, and then they excavate a lot of material that will also impact on the forest because it takes time to get, these topsoils to be able to, get the place revegetated. So it is not only the size, but the impact on our water bodies, the topsoil that is impacted, and the depth of the holes that is created.
Currently, 974 Forestry Commission staff, according to the ministry, are under training to help fight illegal activities in the forest reserves.
Our forests are some of the most important forests in the West African region. While we acknowledge the gravity of forest loss and its adverse consequences on our very survival, let us face the facts. Deforestation and forest degradation, sadly, are not new phenomena in our country.
For his part, the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Samuel Abujinapo, noted that government is not going to relent on its efforts in the fight against illegal mining. The minister also called for a complete interrogation of the Professor Frimpong Boateng's reports to bring finalities to the issue. Joseph Armstrong, Gold, TV3, Accra.
Let's go back to Parliament, where the minority leader has projected Ghana will struggle to get 2% GDP growth this year. Speaking exclusively to Alfred Okansey on a yet-to-be-aired interview in Ghana Tonight, Dr. Kaiser Latoforsen says Ghana can only have an IMF deal by third quarter.
Inflation is hitting the roof. Our city is depreciating at a rapid rate. In fact, our country's economy is failing to grow. We will struggle to get 2% growth this year.
2%?
2%. We'll struggle to get 2% GDP growth this year. We'll struggle. And I'm telling you, we'll struggle.
And that is way below what the finance minister...
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Just like last year, they projected something and we got lower than that.
So you are projecting that...
Up to about 2%.
About
max.
2% GDP growth rate by end of the year.
Max. You see, and let me also say this to you. Have you noticed that Ghana is still struggling to get an IMF program? Mm-hmm. The president came to Parliament, promised us that he's going to get us a deal by March. I said that it's not going to happen. March gone, April gone, we are now in May.
Yes,
I can confirm to you
that by end of month.
Oh, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen?
No way.
We're not getting an IMF
It's
deal
not going to happen.
By end of May?
It's not going to happen. I mean, I urge our minister responsible for finance to be truthful to the people of Ghana and be candid enough to say that, yes, the timelines, I said A, B, and C, but we can't make it. The earliest will be beginning third quarter.
Third quarter?
Beginning third quarter, July, August. That's the earliest.
Do make a date with Alfred Okansey at 10 p.m. on Ghana Tonight as he speaks exclusively to Dr. Kaiser Latoforsen on Ghana's IMF deal.
Right, Aisha, you've got to make a date with Alfredo Kanse tonight. Now, the site of a collapsed three-story building which led to the death of one person in Adentan was cleared a few hours after the accident. Members of the Ghana Institute of Engineers who were at the site were shocked to find out that traces of what might have caused the accident had been wiped out. My colleague Gorina Sidiba has come through with this report.
A day after the collapse of a three-story building killed one during casting, the environment here remained hostile.
I stop the interview. Why won't you make everybody can stop the interview? Prince, you know what you do. I beg you go. I respect you a lot.
Wait, but why won't you allow him to do
I beg you, Lord. I'm not gonna make him do the interview. Why? Prince. He was not here when that happened. Why are you doing interview?
A man from nowhere, believed to be a land guard according to residents, barged into the news team, stopped us from engaging a resident who witnessed the collapse of the building leading to the death of one person and injuring some.
I can't do yourself. You do interview. You can do interview, but he no go do it. You no go fit do interview. Why has a longer tail?
Okay, is it because a three-story building was put together in like 2 weeks, and you think it's okay? You think it's okay for something like that to happen?
Residents say this kind of intimidation has been common since the collapse of the building.
Imagine a three-story building being put together in just 2 weeks. An appalling experience being described by eyewitnesses and residents.
Some people has passed on. One guy as the security of the company, this company, and 5 people injured. Died yesterday.
Though the site has been marked by the Ghana Police Service to avoid people from accessing the area, all debris were cleared in less than 13 hours before daybreak. Members of the Ghana Institute of Engineering who visited the site to ascertain the extent of damage were astonished.
The site seems to have been cleared overnight, so it's difficult to even appreciate what kind of structure was being put up. But we want to reiterate that this kind of incidents are things that shouldn't happen at all if professionals are used. And the law, which is the Act 819, makes it clear that professional engineering practitioners should be used in all construction projects.
Eyewitnesses say workers were hired to clear the space throughout the night. The accident raises further questions about the insurance of permits and supervision of construction work in Ghana. The Langpantanan Medina Municipal Assembly is responsible for granting permits in this neighborhood, but efforts to get answers from them proved futile. Wise Ametefe, a registrar with the Engineering Council, says the controls must be tighter.
Maybe the developer did not go through the requisite processes to have the building approved. You need time for the concrete even to cure. You can't just continue and have three-story building in 2 weeks' time. No. If you go through to the route and he is found to be capable, we'll bring him to book. We can either sanction him or take him to court.
For 5 consecutive times in 4 years, I've been here at the Ghana National Fire Service to find answers as to why they haven't been able to acquire a rescue tender since the institution was founded in 1997. Well, did you know that if there's a road crash and victims are stuck in a car that has been crashed, it is the responsibility of the Ghana National Fire Service to cut through to be able to bring out these people safely? Well, one of the unfortunate incidents that has actually climaxed it all for me is the one that happened on May 1 in Medina, where a 3-story building structure collapsed on workers. Unfortunately for some of the workers, one of them died, and it was a tedious task for the team of the Ghana National Fire Service to be able to cut through the debris to bring this person out. Well, they were not able to conduct the exercise on time because they didn't have the right equipment. Probably a life could have been saved.
In our situation as at now, we don't have a complete rescue tender. What we have is the fire tender that has some amount of rescue equipment in. So you get to incidents like this and it is a bit difficult to carry out the rescue operations. We don't have the necessary equipment to extricate and bring the victim out. So we had to go in for an excavator from a private firm. So that was what we were able to employ to retrieve the body.
Godwin Asideba, TV3, Accra.
To some political stories, and it could become a rare father and son combination in Ghana politics as Dr. Kwabena Duffuor bids to become president of the Republic of Ghana. His son, Kwabena Duffuor II, is hoping to win a seat in parliament, but as the family duo bid for political office, their various careers is coming under scrutiny, particularly after the revocation of the license of Unibank under the leadership of Duffuor II. His father has been addressing concerns raised by the banking sector cleanup and why he is adamant it won't affect his or his son's chances of political office. Martin Isiedu-Date has more.
Not since the 2018 banking sector cleanup has the name Duffuor featured so much in national conversations. Then, the government revoked the license of some 11 local banks, the most prominent arguably being Unibank, part of the business empire of former Finance Minister Dr. Kwabena Duffuor. Dr. Duffuor, who is also a former governor of the Bank of Ghana, has said very little about it until now.
All my companies were being managed by a board of trustees. You understand? So I do not know what they were talking about. I was not on the board. I was not managing any of these companies. Okay? But as we're speaking now, the case is in court. And I want to suggest that we wait until the court comes out with their verdict. Okay?
The banking sector cleanup just didn't touch Duffuor. It touched Kwabena Duffuor II, who was the then chief executive of Unibank. The report into the operations of the bank asked some tough questions of the management of the bank and what regulators said were weak internal control systems that has triggered multiple legal challenges from the Duffuors. Now, father and son, founder and chief executive, want to be president and member of parliament respectively.
Central Farm Place, we need an MP who can mobilize resources and make things move. We don't need an MP who's going to sit in parliament and wait for the salary to come in. You need a businessman who can take risk, who can make things happen.
We are preparing for 2024 elections. To some of us, a major issue that is always in our mind is how do we empower the party? How do we empower the grassroots, the bedrock, the foundation of our party? It's been said in the Bible, when the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do?
To the former finance minister, there is no doubt there is nothing in the Unibank episode that should affect his son's chances of becoming a member of parliament for the Setre-Afram Plains constituency.
Kwabena is 40 years. You understand? Kwabena had his PhD at the age of 28, 27. A publishable dissertation he wrote. At 40, he wants to become a politician. What's wrong with that?
Did he consult you?
Of course he did. I encouraged him to do it.
You blessed him?
I blessed him. I encouraged him, and I'm supporting him. Why not? He deserves to do that.
As the Duffuors go on to their campaign rounds, it is likely they will face more questions about what made them such a wealthy family and what continues to raise serious questions.
In other news tonight, the Securities and Exchange Commission has rejected a request by aggrieved customers of Gold Coast Fund Management Company to adopt a bailout over a liquidation approach in the payment of their locked-up funds. Now, more than 900,000 customers of the defunct company have their investments totaling 5.5 billion cedis locked up for over 5 years. George Quainin reports.
This very protest by aggrieved customers of Gold Coast Fund Management is as a result of series of failed attempts to retrieve their locked up funds of over 5 years, totaling more than 5.5 billion cedis. And prior to this very protest, there was a scheduled meeting between management of SEC and leadership of aggrieved customers. But it ended on a bad note, according to leadership of the aggrieved customers. 2 petitions that were tabled before the management of SEC were one or the other cleared off.
Ms. Ajinfra told us today that there's nothing they can do about the condition. This condition is killing people. All people are dying. And Ms. Ajinfra says that there's nothing they can do about the death of the pensioners. Pensioners who have worked hard, saved this nation with their sweat and blood. They have made their monies. They have put it down for their future use. And if a government policy, this company did not collapse by itself. Gold Coast Fund Management Company was solvent until a Akufo-Addo government touched it with the financial cleanup exercise.
The thing on the lips of all the customers is that they need their monies paid them because they are unable to fend for themselves and their entire families.
Government cannot take any decision that is for their own benefit. It should be the benefit of the citizenship. And you see today, police all over, dressed up like a war. This is a terrible country.
The government have to have mercy because our people are dying. Most of the customers that their money is locked up, they are dying.
Hello all there, good evening and a warm welcome to the business news segment here on News 360. Let's begin with matters on the banking front. And banking consultant Dr. Christian Tichijan says the losses suffered by commercial banks last year can be attributed to the challenging economic conditions as a result of the implementation of the domestic debt exchange program. The latest release of financial results by banks shows that 15 out of the 21 banks in the country recorded losses. Speaking to 3 Business, Dr. Tichijan explained that the banks were compelled to make provisions for these expected losses, a move which negatively impacted their profits.
Getting to the tail end of the year, with a lot of speculations, especially with the government bonds repayments not coming in. And if you look at the IFRS reporting templates, definitely so far as there are speculations and we are not very sure what a particular portfolio is actually going to do or it's going through, you have to downgrade it. And by downgrading, you make provisions for it. If you are making provisions, that amounts to impairment where you take money from the existing profit made and provision is actually made for it. So it was actually expected that a lot of the banks weren't going to do that well because we have the situation where a lot of the banks are actually giving their monies to government. So once there was a problem or a challenge with that particular investment portfolio, it was definitely going to affect the quality. And therefore, reporting-wise, provision had to be made.
In other news tonight, an economist at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, says the many timelines for a deal with the International Monetary Fund is not feasible. He notes the earliest will be after the mid-year budget review. President Akufo-Addo at this year's May Day parade noted that the board approval for an IMF bailout after completing the necessary requirements is imminent.
Clearly, if you look at the happenings on the grounds and the way our debt was restructured, I don't foresee the May timelines to be feasible. And if anything at all, we're looking at beyond the budget review. Now, if you take our external debt restructuring, they give us condition. The condition is that restructure both your internal and external debt. We've been able to do away with, the internal debt. But then the external debt, looking at the geographic locations of our creditors and how diversified they are, it's going to be difficult to bring them together. I was thinking the IMF, spring meeting was supposed to be an opportunity to bring, all the creditors together for them to know exactly what is happening in Ghana. If you talk about, the Paris Club, you talk about the Chinese bloc, you talk about, the Eurobond, and within the Eurobond, there are several investors, investor community within this Eurobond. And so for me, negotiating with, these creditors in a diverse manner is going to be difficult.
Now, following the implementation of 3 new tax bills passed by Parliament, there are fears government may not be able to achieve its revenue target of 4.2 billion cedis. Now, speaking in an interview with 3 Business, a tax policy analyst, Alex Ampabe, said with the prevailing unfavorable business environment, companies who adapt smart methods to lessen their tax burdens cannot be faulted. In other news tonight, the spokesperson for the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, John Awuni, has hinted the prices of goods and affected by the excise tax could increase by up to 35%. Speaking to 3 Business, John Awuni said the excise tax would also attract VAT, pushing it from 20 to 27% at the factory level.
For the fruit juices and generally those commodities that have been affected by the excise tax, which is 20%, prices will go up between 27 to 35%. At the factory level, prices are expected to go up by 27% in the sense that the excise tax is an ex-factory tax and will also now attract VAT. And that is why instead of 20%, it will go up by 27%. And when it's taken up by wholesalers from the factory, they will also add their margins and then also adjust their prices. And it may also go up to the retailers and then finally to the consumer. So in the chain of distribution, the net effect will be between 27 to 35% price increases.
Elsewhere, RANA Motors and Metalworks Engineering Company Limited have commissioned an ultra-modern vehicle assembly plant at Amasaman in the Ga West municipality of the Greater Accra region. Commissioning the facility, President Akufo-Addo hinted the government will soon roll out an asset-based vehicle financing scheme to enable Ghanaians buy made-in-Ghana vehicles.
With future expansion in mind, RANA Motors intends to eventually produce 75,000 vehicles a year and employ some 3,500 workers. President Akufo-Addo encouraged the patronage of made-in-Ghana vehicles to hasten economic recovery, create jobs and boost their incomes.
The state alone cannot purchase the sufficient numbers of vehicles to be produced from our assembly plants and will thus require Ghanaians also to patronize these vehicles. To stimulate demand for domestically assembled vehicles, we will soon be rolling out an asset-based vehicle financing scheme as it exists in developed economies to afford Ghanaians the opportunity to purchase vehicles from the Ghana Automotive Development Program.
Chief Operating Officer of RANA Motors, Kasim Odamat, observed productivity quality, satisfying Ghanaian standards and custom needs, give the owner a comparative lower cost of ownership and good value for money.
It is done up to standards. Whatever you see outside of Ghana, made in Korea and made in other places in the world, it is the same quality and the same standards. Actually, at the end of the day, Kia has came to give the training to our people and to our engineers, and also made sure that we have passed all the levels of certifications for us to be able to assemble vehicles over here.
Deputy Head of Mission at Korea Embassy noted the assembly plant brings Ghana closer to its automobile hub agenda.
And really we want to try and maximize the production from this factory so we can build every single car. You've seen today, there's 6 different models already being done and very different models. So if they can handle this much complexity, we can handle anything in this factory. So really looking forward to it.
In 1986, RANA Motors was awarded the dealership in Kia vehicles and the first in sub-Saharan Africa.
That's it for the very latest in the world of business. For more business news stories, do also visit our website. It's www.3news.com. Thierry Nyan is on standby with the very latest in the world of sports.
All right, time now for the sports here on News 360. My name is THREE-STOREY. Now we start with athletics, where Ghana's James Datsey ran a world-leading time in 200 meters when he crossed the finish line in 19.79 seconds. It has earned him a ticket to the World Championships later this year and is on course to becoming one of the household names in the sport in Ghana. Yafo Sulabi tells his story.
Datsey's trajectory as an athlete has been inspiring. His first ever announcement to a big stage was at the Central Regional Super Zonals Athletics Championships in Cape Coast when he stormed to a 100-meter win while running for Agri Memorial AME Zion Senior High School. He was their star, a star who had become a champion of the Central Region. And for him, running came easy.
It's all about techniques. You listen to your coach, you follow the instructions that they give you, you can pass through.
Now he has run the world-leading time in 200 meters at 19.79 seconds, which has effectively made him the national record holder, a title formerly held by Joseph Paul Amoah, who ran a time of 20.08 seconds a few years back. It has been a long road for Datsey. In the United States, under the tutelage of the legendary James Williams, he has had to learn to run all over again, listening to the gun, picking his head up and running in the right posture when the race gets into the dry phase. He has had to do all of that again.
For instance, I was a very poor starter in Ghana, but when I got here, my coach has been able to correct that error, so now I can really react with the gun sometimes, but it's not perfect. But it's better than what I was doing in Ghana. Ghanaian coaches are really, really good, just that we don't get enough competitions in Ghana. That is our main problem, because you can train for like a whole 6 months and then you run 2 competitions. How are you going to work on your mistakes and then improve? But here, every weekend, you are competing.
Datsey's coach, James Williams, was also the man who helped Janet Amponsa to break the national women's record in 200 meters. Beyond all the training, Williams is also building the young athlete's mental psyche. This was Datsey when he stormed his way to a second-place finish at a 60-meter indoor competition earlier this year.
I personally believe that in myself I won, but anyway, technology says I was second, but I just have to let it go because it was fun, and it was a nice experience.
Datsey, like every other athlete, wants to run at the Olympic Games, and it is a dream he wants to fulfill as early as next year in Paris.
I just want to make my dad proud to be seen on the podium of Olympic Games, receiving a medal, because that has always been my dad's dream, and then he couldn't accomplish that. So it has always been my target to make him proud, to get to that level and then showing that, Dad, what you were not able to do, I did it for you.
The young athlete is on a road to success, and he has set off pretty fast, sprinting towards his goals. With an injury-free season and a year-on-year improvement, the sky can only be the limit for James Datsey.
Welcome to the Entertainment News segment. My name is Anita Ekia Ekufu, and the most anticipated night of fashion on the calendar, the Met Gala, regarded as fashion's biggest night out, came off last night at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Themed Karl Lagerfeld, a line of beauty in honor of the late famous designer. The event was graced by some of the most influential personalities in the arts, music, film, sports, and fashion industry. Notable personalities including Nigeria's Burna Boy, Thames, and award-winning South African comedian Trevor Noah, British Guinean actor Idris Elba, and his wife Sabrina Elba graced the red carpet. Now let's come back down here, and the countdown is on to the 24th Vodafone Ghana Music Awards, which is just 4 days away. Any idea which artists have won the Artist of the Year since its inception? Just to take you down memory lane, here's a list of the winners of the VGMA's topmost category in the history of the awards. The prestigious Vodafone Ghana Music Awards has for 24 years celebrated outstanding Guinean artists for their hard work and creativity. The topmost VGMA honors, Artist of the Year, has seen keen competition over the period as it ultimately affirms an artist's supremacy over his peers in the year under review. Here's a look at recipients of the Artist of the Year accolade. 2000, Daddy Lumba. Born Charles Kojofosu, Guinean singer and hitmaker Daddy Lumba won the Made in Ghana Music Awards held in the year 2000. Released in the late 1998, DL's monster hit did the magic for him. 2000, Lord of his bitterest rival, Obrafo, born Michael Elliot Kwabna Ochridako. 2003, Kunti Hene. 2004, VIP. 2005, Bice Osei-Kuffour aka Obuo. 2006, Oforian Ponsa. 2007, Samini. 2008, Kwao Kese. 2009, Ochiame Kwame. 2010, Sarkodie. VIP recaptured the honors for the second time in 2011. 2012, Sarkodie came back stronger to win VGMA Artist of the Year for the second time. So we'll bring you more on this list in a subsequent broadcast right here on TV3. My name is Anita Ikia Ikufu. Have a good evening.
Uganda's parliament has watered down an anti-homosexuality bill that originally criminalized people for simply identifying as LGBTQ+. Members of the public were going to have to report individuals in same-sex relationships to the authorities. Later, the bill was returned to Parliament after President Yoweri Museveni suggested changes. He said the clause penalizing people who identify as gay would have led to the prosecution of people simply for their physical appearance. Even though this latest version of the bill has been watered down since its first appearance last month, it is still one of the toughest pieces of anti-gay legislation on the continent. More than 100,000 people have fled Sudan since heavy fighting broke out between rival forces on 15th April, the UN has said. Officials warned of a full-blown...
Well, that's how we conclude News 360. Came to you live from our studios here at Adesawe in Kanda. Accra. For more news, do also visit our website. It's www.3news.com. My name is Pa Kwesi Asare.
And I am Portia Gabwa. Make a date with Alfredo Kanse at 10 on Ghana Tonight.